Hanna-Barbera ruled Saturday mornings with Scooby-Doo, the Flintstones, and the Jetsons. But
my tour!
behind those classics were dozens of cartoons that disappeared. Some were too weird, some too repetitive, and some so controversial they never saw reruns again.
I told you I wasn't smoking.
A squid who dreamed of being a rock star, a genie too powerful for his own show, even a prehistoric superhero with a magic club. These are the cartoons time buried. Tonight, we uncover 40 strangest Hanna-Barbera cartoons from the past you have never heard of, forgotten creations that flopped, shocked, or secretly shaped TV history. Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles.
Thanks, Frankie.
Don't mention it, Buzz.
What happens when Hanna-Barbera tries to mix superheroes with a garage band? You get Frankenstein Jr. and the Impossibles. By day, the Impossibles were a rock trio. By night, they were superheroes with the weirdest powers. One could turn into liquid, another could stretch, and another could multiply himself. And when things got serious, a boy scientist called upon Frankenstein Jr., a massive robot powered by atomic energy. Sounds epic, right? Except critics weren't thrilled about kids absorbing weekly doses of radiation-powered heroics during the Cold War. The show also felt like two half ideas glued together, a robot cartoon and a superhero parody. Still, its theme song and surreal concept gave it cult appeal. But if you thought radioactive robots were strange, wait until you see Hanna-Barbera's very first TV cartoon experiment, The Rough and Ready Show, 1957 to 1960.
A pair of arms reached out and grabbed poor Ruff. He was
This one deserves a spot in history. It was Hanna-Barbera's very first TV cartoon. Rough and Ready starred a smart cat and a not-so-bright dog. And unlike later shows, it told serialized adventures that stretched across episodes. For kids in the late 50s, this was addictive. You had to tune in every week. But the pacing was slow, the animation was crude, and by the 60s, audiences preferred faster, gag-driven shows like the Flintstones or Yogi Bear. Still, without Rough and Ready proving that cartoons could work on TV, there might never have been a Hanna-Barbera empire at all. Forgotten today, they were the pioneers of Saturday morning. And speaking of pioneers, next up is a cartoon that blasted Saturday mornings into outer space. Space Ghost and Dino Boy, 1966-1968.
Yet the temperature is falling fast.
And it will fall faster, Space Ghost.
With his flowing cape, booming voice, and wrist-ray gauntlets, he was a legit space superhero, so iconic the Cartoon Network revived him decades later as a late-night talk show parody. But originally, Space Ghost wasn't just cosmic battles. It was paired with Dino Boy in the Lost Valley, a jungle adventure about a boy and his caveman sidekick. The mix of sci-fi and prehistoric action was unusual, but kids tuned in for Space Ghost's epic villains. The catch? Violence. Parents groups in the 60s worried about laser battles and non-stop explosions. The show only ran 2 years, but its shadow lasted decades. Still, this wasn't Hanna-Barbera's only attempt to chase the family of the future vibe. That honor belongs to the next entry, The Jetsons, 1962-1963.
School. Bye, dear.
Bye, Mom. See you in orbit.
Why? Because it aired opposite Disney's Wonderful World of Color and lost badly. Critics also noticed something odd. Despite all the futuristic gadgets, Jane Jetson was still written as a 1960s housewife. For years, The Jetsons was considered a failed experiment until reruns in the 70s made it a cultural classic. Kids loved Rosie the Robot and Astro the Dog. Adults picked up on its satire of consumerism. But in the early 60s, it was just another canceled show. And while The Jetsons dreamed of tomorrow, Hanna-Barbera's next cartoon focused on something far simpler, stealing picnic baskets. The Yogi Bear Show, 1961, this 1962.
Come on out, boo-boo. It's spring again. Yay!
Yogi Bear might be remembered as a pop culture icon, but his original standalone series is almost forgotten. After debuting on the Huckleberry Hound show, Yogi got his own spotlight, alongside Boo Boo and Ranger Smith in the Yogi Bear Show. The formula was simple. Yogi tries to steal food, gets caught, and laughs his way out of trouble. Kids loved it. Parents, though, complained that Yogi was teaching kids to break rules and disrespect authority. Even park rangers reportedly hated their cartoon counterpart. Despite the backlash, Yogi's catchphrases and charm carried him into TV specials, movies, and even merchandising. But his first solo series faded quickly, overshadowed by Hanna-Barbera's bigger hits. Still, Jellystone Park never really closed, and the next show proves Hanna-Barbera loved making families feud on screen. The Hillbilly Bears, 1965 to 1967.
It's that bear. He's sleeping right smack in the middle of our path.
If you thought Yogi was rustic, wait for this one. The Hillbilly Bears was Hanna-Barbera's attempt at Appalachian comedy, riding the wave of the Beverly Hillbillies. It followed Papaw Rugg and his bear family, usually caught in feuds, gunfights, and slapstick mayhem. Kids laughed at Papaw's mumbling voice, but adults weren't impressed. Critics slammed it for rural stereotypes, gun-toting, illiterate mountain folk, which aged poorly as TV audiences shifted away from hillbilly humor. The show never had the staying power of Yogi or Huckleberry Hound. Still, its feud-filled antics are a time capsule of when rural comedy dominated television. And if you think a mumbling bear with a shotgun was weird, wait until you meet the alley cats who ran their own gang. Top Cat, 1961 to 1962.
Now, the first thing I'm going to teach you is a left jab. Watch.
Here's a cult classic that bombed when it first aired. Top Cat was modeled after The Phil Silvers Show, a sitcom with alley cats hustling schemes while dodging Officer Dibble. On paper, it was perfect. Jazzy theme song, witty banter, primetime slot. In reality, it only lasted 30 episodes. Why? Critics said it felt too much like a live-action sitcom in cartoon clothing. Parents also raised eyebrows at how it mocked police, showing Dibble as a bumbling fool. But in reruns, Top Cat thrived, especially overseas. In Latin America, he's still beloved as Don Gato, proof that a cartoon can flop in the US but live forever elsewhere. And speaking of lasting forever, our next entry became Hanna-Barbera's most immortal creation. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? 1969 to 1970?
Uncle Scooby? Hi, I'm Scrappy-Doo.
Now this is the crown jewel. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Only ran 2 seasons, but it never left the air. Every week, 4 teens and their talking Great Dane unmasked criminals dressed as monsters. Simple? Yes. Effective? Absolutely. Kids loved the mystery formula, and adults appreciated the humor. But it wasn't controversy-free. Parents groups worried about occult themes, and critics mocked its repetitive plots. Yet, that repetition was its secret weapon. It was easy to watch, easy to rerun, and endlessly adaptable. Scooby became a merchandising giant, spinning off into dozens of versions. From laugh tracks to laughable villains, Scooby was unstoppable. But before Scooby, Hanna-Barbera tried something darker, a wolf who wanted desperately to prove he was a good guy. Loopy de Loop, 1959 to 1965.
Worry not, female woman in distress. Loopy de Loop will save you.
Loopy was Hanna-Barbera's only theatrical cartoon character, a polite French-Canadian wolf who insisted, "I am Loopy de Loop, the good wolf." His whole identity revolved around proving he wasn't like other wolves. Sweet idea, but in practice, tragic. Every short ended with him misunderstood, rejected, or mocked. For kids, it was bittersweet, funny gags with a sad undercurrent. Adults, however, saw something deeper: prejudice, discrimination, the pain of being an outsider. Some critics even found his thick French accent borderline offensive. Loopy's shorts ran for 6 years in theaters, but once Hanna-Barbera pivoted to TV, he vanished. Today, Loopy is barely remembered, just a wolf who wanted love in a world that never gave it. But if Loopy was too sad, the next cartoon was pure adventure. The Adventures of Gulliver, 1968 to 1969.
But after what happened tonight, I realized they were no accidents.
But why would anyone want to harm you, Dad?
Inspired by Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, Hanna-Barbera gave kids a dose of fantasy with Gary Gulliver and his loyal dog Tag. Shrunk down among the tiny Lilliputians, Gulliver faced both whimsical and perilous adventures. It sounded like a classic fairy tale adaptation, but Hanna-Barbera's budget meant recycled animation and stiff pacing. Kids loved Tag the dog more than Gary himself, and critics said the series lacked spark. Still, the Lilliputians' world fascinated young imaginations, offering a break from slapstick animals. Unfortunately, it aired during a crowded Saturday morning lineup and lasted just 1 season. Forgotten today, Gulliver stands as proof Hanna-Barbera could dabble in literary adventure even if it didn't last. But if fairy tales didn't stick, maybe a gorilla for sale could. The Magilla Gorilla Show, 1964-1967.
Thank you, Mr. Peebles. This will last me for an hour or so.
Imagine buying a gorilla from a pet shop. That was the premise of the Magilla Gorilla Show. Every episode, Magilla was sold to a new owner, only to be returned after chaos. On one hand, kids found it hilarious. On the other, it hit uncomfortable notes, with critics comparing Magilla's constant rejection to social anxieties about belonging. Still, Magilla was a marketing success. His face plastered on toys, lunchboxes, and ads. His catchy theme, "We've got a gorilla for sale," became playground fodder. But the show itself? Repetitive and thin on story. By the late 60s, Magilla faded into obscurity, replaced by new stars like Scooby-Doo. His brief fame was proof Hanna-Barbera could sell anything, even a gorilla in a cage. Next up, not a gorilla, but a cosmic superhero squad. Birdman and the Galaxy Trio, 1967-1968.
I know that voice. It's Mentok, the evil mind taker.
Long before Marvel's cinematic universe, Hanna-Barbera tried its own superhero team-up. Birdman, a solar-powered hero who shouted "Beardman" to activate his powers, fought cosmic villains alongside the Galaxy Trio, three interstellar heroes with powers like size shifting and super strength. It looked epic on paper, but critics noted the recycled plots. Birdman zaps villain, Galaxy Trio saves the day. Repeat. Some even worried the constant solar energy powers echoed Cold War obsessions with atomic might. The show lasted just 1 year, but lived on in cult parody decades later with Harvey Birdman, attorney at law. What was once a serious superhero cartoon became comedy gold. But before Birdman flapped into obscurity, Hanna-Barbera released a genie so powerful he broke his own show. Shazam, 1967-1969.
He caught it! Good work, boy! Okay, Nancy.
Take teenage twins, give them magic rings, and suddenly, Shazam! A booming genie appears conjuring solutions to every problem. The Arabian Nights-inspired show looked exotic, but it had two big problems. First, controversy. Its Middle Eastern caricatures didn't age well, with critics calling it an Orientalist stereotype fest. Second, storytelling. Every episode ended the same. Shazam appears, instantly fixes everything, no suspense. Still, kids in the 60s were mesmerized by his size, voice, and surreal settings. Today, Shazam is remembered only by collectors of obscure animation. It showed Hanna-Barbera's willingness to experiment, but proved that too much power can kill the drama. Still, if you thought Shazam's sky-splitting genie was wild, the next cartoon strapped villains into flying contraptions just to make them fail. Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machines, 1969-1970.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now, if you'd be so kind.
A spin-off from Wacky Races, this series followed Dick Dastardly and his wheezy dog Muttley as they tried and failed to stop that pigeon. Every week, the duo built outrageous flying machines only to crash in slapstick defeat. Kids adored Muttley's snickering laugh, but critics saw the repetition. Same gag every episode. Some watchdog groups also criticized the violence, planes exploding, pilots crashing, played for laughs. But despite its short run, the series burned itself into pop culture. Even today, Muttley's laugh is instantly recognizable. It's proof that sometimes one sound effect can outlive the whole show. And while Dastardly and Muttley kept falling from the sky, Hanna-Barbera's next spy spoof aimed straight for James Bond. Secret Squirrel, 1965-1966.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Chet Nutley reporting from Cape Launcham, where the world's largest atomic submarine.
During peak Cold War spy mania, Hanna-Barbera gave kids their own secret agent, a trench coat wearing squirrel with gadgets galore. With sidekick Morocco Mole, Secret Squirrel spoofed James Bond while dodging bizarre villains. It was witty, gadget-filled, and undeniably fun, but controversies lurked. Many villains were exaggerated ethnic caricatures with accents that don't hold up today. The show also struggled to stand out, paired in a time slot with Adam Ant. Still, its legacy endured. Secret Squirrel resurfaced in the 90s with a Cartoon Network revival, proof that even the forgotten agents sometimes get a second mission. But while Secret Squirrel spied his way into history, Hanna-Barbera's next show was a psychedelic trip with men in costumes and surreal songs. The Banana Splits Adventure Hour, 1968-1970.
The Banana Split!
This one wasn't just a cartoon, it was a full-blown kids variety show. The Banana Splits were 4 costumed animal rock stars hosting comedy sketches, surreal musical numbers, and animated segments like Arabian Nights and the Three Musketeers. It was loud, colorful, and just plain bizarre. Kids loved the slapstick while adults scratched their heads. The biggest legacy? Its theme song, Tra-la-la, la-la-la-la. Decades later, it became a cult anthem and even got twisted into a horror movie adaptation. But back in the late 60s, the Banana Splits were a psychedelic experiment that couldn't last. Still, their weird blend of music and mayhem makes them one of Hanna-Barbera's strangest creations. And next, Hanna-Barbera went back to basics. A cat and mouse feud with a shotgun twist. Pumpkin Puss and Mush Mouse, 1964-1966.
Now I wonder what Mush Mouse is hooing about.
Think Tom and Jerry, but southern fried. Pumpkin Puss, a hillbilly cat with a shotgun, endlessly chased Mush Mouse, the wily rodent who always escaped. Kids laughed at the slapstick mayhem, but parents weren't amused. Critics slammed it for heavy use of rural stereotypes and the constant gunplay, which came at a time when watchdog groups were already worried about violence in kids' TV. The series never broke past being a novelty, just a country twist on an old formula. Once the hillbilly fad faded from television, so did Pumpkin Puss. But if you thought cats with rifles were strange, Hanna-Barbera's next witch flew in with a broom named Norman. Winsome Witch, 1965-1966.
Oh, I just love ocean cruises.
Before Sabrina or Bewitched, Hanna-Barbera had Winnie, the Winsome Witch. Cheerful and bumbling, she flew on her talking broomstick Norman and tried to use magic for good, usually with disastrous results. Kids adored her catchphrase, "I'll hocus pocus you." But parents weren't as charmed. Some groups accused the show of trivializing witchcraft during a decade when occult themes were treated with suspicion. This backlash limited reruns, keeping Winnie in the shadows. Still, she stood out as one of the few female leads in Hanna-Barbera's lineup. Forgotten today, Winsome Witch is a reminder of the studio's rare attempts to make magic funny, not frightening. But Hanna-Barbera didn't just dabble in spells, they also put an entire racetrack of lunatics on screen. Wacky Races, 1968-1969.
That car is a radio-controlled dummy, and it's loaded with dynamite.
One of Hanna-Barbera's wildest ideas. Take a cast of eccentric characters, strap them into insane cars, and let them race endlessly. Wacky Races featured 11 vehicles, from cavemen in a Boulder mobile to a haunted house on wheels. Fans loved the chaos, especially the scheming Dick Dastardly and his snickering dog Muttley. But here's the twist. The races never had a true payoff. Dastardly always lost, usually because of his own cheating. Critics said it was repetitive, but kids didn't care. They tuned in to see which car would win this week. The format spun off multiple shows proving chaos sells. Still, as fun as it was, the next Hanna-Barbera star packed more kabong than horsepower. The Quick Draw McGraw Show, 1959-1961.
I just tossed this tin can up in the air, whip out my 6-gun, and...
A bumbling sheriff with a burro sidekick, Quick Draw McGraw was a Western parody through and through. Kids laughed at his clumsy law enforcement, but the real gem was his alter ego, El Kabong, a masked hero who whacked villains with his guitar. That absurd twist made the show unforgettable, but also controversial. Some critics felt El Kabong's Mexican caricature sidekick, Baba Louie, leaned too hard on stereotypes. Add in the non-stop gunplay, and parents worried it was too violent. Still, Quick Draw was one of Hanna-Barbera's first big stars, setting the stage for future parodies. But if Quick Draw was silly, his speedy rabbit cousin took slapstick into overdrive. Ricochet Rabbit and Droop Along, 1964-1965.
Bumbleweed is gonna rob the train.
Sounds like he's up to something, Mr. Ricochet.
Set in the Wild West, Ricochet Rabbit was the fastest sheriff in the West, bouncing around town with lightning speed to foil outlaws, always with his slow-witted deputy Droop Along in tow. His catchphrase, "Ping, ping, ping, Ricochet Rabbit," became playground gold, but repetition killed it. Every episode followed the same formula. Ricochet zooms in, Droop Along bungles, villains lose. The real controversy? Slapstick gunplay during an era of growing concern about cartoon violence. Networks grew cautious, and Ricochet bounced out of schedules. Still, his zany speed made him a nostalgic favorite in reruns. But while Ricochet zipped through town, Hanna-Barbera's next family took prehistoric sitcom life into prime time. The Flintstones, 1960-1966.
Hey, Barney, I think I'll fix that knock in your motor. Okay, Fred, I'll start the fire.
The first primetime animated sitcom, The Flintstones, was marketed as the cartoon for adults. It was basically the Honeymooners in prehistoric times. Fred and Wilma Flintstone, Barney and Betty Rubble, and Stone Age gags like a bird acting as a record player. It became a cultural phenomenon, but not without controversy. Cigarette sponsorships, laugh tracks, and gender stereotypes sparked debate. Still, it set the gold standard. Without the Flintstones, there'd be no Simpsons, no Family Guy, no primetime animation. But before the modern Stone Age family changed TV forever, Hanna-Barbera gave us a superhero who was literally an ant. Adam Ant, 1965-1967.
Uh-oh, I'm picking up a distress signal on my ant antenna.
Before Marvel's Ant-Man hit theaters, Hanna-Barbera had Adam Ant, a tiny insect with atomic strength. Living in an anthill with a hotline to the police, he zipped into action to battle villains and mad scientists. His catchphrase, "Up and Adam, Adam Ant," was a Saturday morning staple, but the show's Cold War undertones drew criticism. Kids saw him as fun. Parents saw another atomic atomic hero pushing nuclear age optimism. The stories often recycled Hanna-Barbera tropes, and by the late 60s, Adam Ant had faded from syndication. Still, he paved the way for Hanna-Barbera's superhero era. And while Adam Ant fought crime, Hanna-Barbera's next star was just trying to survive as a helpless duck. Yankee Doodle, 1961-1962.
I'm not so wild about the idea anymore. But if you say so, here goes.
A tiny duck with a big heart, Yaki was endlessly targeted by predators, always rescued by his loyal bulldog friend Chopper. His squeaky voice made kids smile, but critics weren't kind. The stories repeated endlessly. Yaki in trouble, Chopper saves him, villains get clobbered. Parents also worried it normalized slapstick violence. Still, the bond between Yaki and Chopper gave the show heart, even if it never reached the fame of Yogi Bear or Huckleberry Hound. Forgotten today, Yaki remains a faint memory of Hanna-Barbera's early days. But don't tune out yet. The next entry shrank a classic American novel into Saturday morning cartoon form. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, 1968-1969.
It's no use, Tom. We can't catch him.
All right. Then we'll just have to storm the castle.
Yes, Hanna-Barbera actually adapted Mark Twain for Saturday mornings. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn turned Huck, Tom Sawyer, and Becky Thatcher into cartoon adventurers, drifting down the Mississippi with a dog named Ruff. On paper, it was literary fun. In reality, it ran into trouble. Twain's themes of slavery and race were scrubbed out, leaving a sanitized, bland version. Critics called it adventure light. Kids didn't connect either. The stories felt old-fashioned compared to superheroes and space cartoons. It only lasted one season, quickly forgotten. Still, it showed Hanna-Barbera wasn't afraid to dip into classic literature, even if they left most of the classic out. And while Huck floated downriver, Hanna-Barbera's next hero carried a sword and cried his battle cry, "Touché away!" Touché Turtle and Dum Dum, 1962-1963.
Tin Can Alley, Dum Dum. Touché away!
Armed with a rapier and an endless supply of confidence, Touché Turtle was Hanna-Barbera's swashbuckling reptile hero. His sidekick, Dum Dum the dog, bumbled along as they fought villains across time, medieval castles one week, Wild West saloons the next. Kids loved the swordplay and fast-paced antics, but parents weren't laughing. Critics flagged the constant fencing and slapstick violence. Add in repetitive storylines and Touché's adventures dulled quickly. Still, his cry of "Touché away" made him memorable. He was one of Hanna-Barbera's first attempts to blend animal slapstick with heroic adventure. And while Touché fought with blades, the next Hanna-Barbera star fought for freedom from a zoo. Wally Gator, 1962-1963.
2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, ho!
Wally Gator was a friendly alligator living in a zoo, forever trying to escape and explore the outside world, only to be dragged back by his caretaker, Mr. Twiddle. His southern drawl and cheerful optimism made him endearing, but the stories grew repetitive fast. Critics noted a darker undertone. Wally's life was basically captivity comedy, freedom always denied. Some even read it as an allegory for conformity in the 1960s. Kids, of course, just saw a goofy gator on adventures. Still, Wally never reached Yogi Bear levels of fame and quickly slid into obscurity. But if Wally was stuck in a zoo, Hanna-Barbera's next kid hero was globe-trotting into danger alongside his famous dad. Johnny Quest, 1964-1965.
I got your computer and I got you. Judd, listen to me. The name's Skyborg.
Unlike Hanna-Barbera's usual slapstick, Johnny Quest was pure pulp adventure. Johnny, his scientist father, bodyguard Race Bannon, and friend Haji tackled mysteries with jetpacks, hovercrafts, and deadly villains. Kids loved its gadgets and exotic locales, but controversy followed. Some parents found it too violent, with death and explosions shown more directly than most cartoons. Others pointed to racial stereotypes in its villains. Still, Johnny Quest became a cult classic, pioneering the action-adventure cartoon format. Its original run only lasted one season, but reruns kept it alive for decades. Today, it's remembered as Hanna-Barbera's boldest, most cinematic show. And if Johnny's adventures were high stakes, the next two stars were all about Arctic slapstick. Breezely and Sneezely, 1964-1966.
I'm getting you in there to see the doctor.
if I have to dig a tunnel clear through to China.
Set in the Arctic, this oddball cartoon followed Breezely Bruin, a mischievous polar bear, and his sneezy sidekick seal, Sneezely. Their main mission? Sneak into Camp Frostbite, a military base, while clashing with the stern Colonel Fuzzby. It was slapstick fun, but controversial. Parents weren't thrilled about kids laughing at military authority during the Cold War. Critics also complained about the repetitive plots. Breezely's schemes, Sneezely's sneeze, Colonel's rage, repeat. Unsurprisingly, the show faded quickly. Still, kids remembered the snowy chaos fondly. Forgotten now, Breezely and Sneezely are proof Hanna-Barbera wasn't afraid to poke fun at authority. But the next duo wasn't sneezing. They were stuck in a comedy loop of optimism versus gloom. Lippy the Lion and Hardy Har Har, 1962-1963.
Don't move, Hardy. You just drank nitroglycerin.
What's nitroglycerin?
A cheerful lion and a perpetually gloomy hyena, this odd couple made up Lippy the Lion and Hardy Har Har. Every episode, Lippy dreamed up schemes with unshakable optimism, while Hardy moaned, "Oh dear, oh my." It was quirky, but critics called it one-joke comedy. Kids liked the slapstick, but adults quickly tired of the formula. Some later observers even saw Hardy's depressive outlook as reflecting 1960s anxieties. Still, the pair lived on through cameos in later specials. They never hit the fame of Yogi Bear, but they did carve out a strange, pessimistic corner of Hanna-Barbera history. And if you thought Hardy was gloomy, wait until you meet the three bumbling musketeers of Saturday morning TV. Yippee, Yappy, and Yahooey, 1964-1966.
Go on, he'd crack up before he'd crack down.
These three canine knights were supposed to guard their king, but mostly cause disasters. Loosely based on the Three Musketeers, Yippee, Yappy, and Yahooey brought slapstick chaos to a medieval setting. Kids enjoyed the antics, but critics weren't impressed. Plots quickly grew repetitive. Dogs bungle, king yells, chaos ensues. Some parents even complained it disrespected authority by portraying the king as a fool. With limited animation and tired gags, the show disappeared from reruns. Still, the trio occasionally resurfaced in Hanna-Barbera specials. Forgotten today, they remain a curious experiment in mixing fairy tale settings with cartoon comedy. But if these knights failed at protecting their king, Hanna-Barbera's next star roared onto the scene with flamboyant flair. Snagglepuss, 1961-1962.
Oh, would that I were free, unfettered and uncaged.
Heavens to Murgatroyd! With his pink fur, theatrical mannerisms, and love for drama, Snagglepuss was one of Hanna-Barbera's quirkiest creations. Originally a Yogi Bear side character, he spun off into his own shorts. But without strong supporting characters, the series leaned too much on recycled gags and Snagglepuss's flamboyant persona. Critics weren't impressed. Later on, his exaggerated mannerisms sparked debate as coded stereotypes, which made networks hesitant to rerun him. By the 1970s, Snagglepuss was mostly relegated to cameos in ensemble specials. Still, his catchphrases gave him cult status, remembered more for voice and flair than for actual stories. But as flamboyant as Snagglepuss was, Hanna-Barbera's very next cartoon wasn't about flair. It was about the birth of an empire. The Flagstones, pilot 1960.
Wilma, when are we going shopping?
As soon as I serve His Majesty's lunch.
Before Fred ever shouted Yabba Dabba Doo, the Flintstones began as the Flagstones. This rarely seen pilot introduced Fred, Wilma, Barney, and Betty, but with rougher animation and slightly different personalities. The name had to be changed due to legal conflicts, and history was rewritten. Critics later noted how crude the animation looked compared to what the series became. But without the Flagstones, the sitcom-style cartoon might never have happened. It was Hanna-Barbera's biggest gamble. Could adults watch cartoons in prime time? The answer reshaped TV forever. The pilot itself remains a curiosity, a shadow of a legend that was about to explode. And while the Flagstones were buried, Hanna-Barbera's next heroine was always escaping danger. The Perils of Penelope Pitstop, 1969-1970.
I don't sneeze easily.
This black pepper will change your mind.
Straight out of Wacky Races, Penelope Pitstop got her own series, one giant parody of silent film melodramas. Penelope was a glamorous heiress constantly targeted by the hooded claw who trapped her in ridiculous contraptions week after week. Kids enjoyed the slapstick escapes, but adults rolled their eyes at how predictable it was. Villain cackles, trap fails, Penelope escapes. Critics also raised eyebrows at the damsel in distress formula, even by 1960s standards. Still, Penelope had charm, her pink race racing outfit making her a standout character. She didn't race long, but she proved Hanna-Barbera could take one joke and spin it into a full series. And speaking of spin-offs, the next star was a wheezy pup who stole the show from his sweet old owner. Precious Pup, 1965-1967. On the surface, Granny Sweet's dog Precious looked harmless, but once provoked, he unleashed a terrifying growl that sent villains scrambling. Kids loved the contrast between cute and ferocious, punctuated by his wheezy, sinister laugh. Critics, however, weren't as kind. They said the show relied on the same gag too often. Precious looks cute, Precious growls, villains panic. It also drew fire from watchdog groups for its slapstick violence, echoing Tom and Jerry. The character faded fast, but his laugh lived on, etched into the memories of anyone who heard it. But while Precious Pup relied on one joke, Hanna-Barbera's next creation built a whole universe of monsters and heroes. The Herculoids, 1967-1968.
Robots seem to be operating on some hidden power source. You think we can locate it?
What if superheroes lived on a prehistoric alien planet? That was the Herculoids. Xandor, Terra, and their son Dorno fought villains with the help of bizarre creatures. A laser-eyed dragon, a rock ape, a rhino-like beast, and two shape-shifting blobs named Gloop and Gleep. Kids were obsessed with the creatures, but parents thought the battles were too violent. The stories were straightforward. Bad guys invade, Herculoids fight back, but the visuals stuck in viewers' heads. Though short-lived, the Herculoids became cult icons, revived in later Hanna-Barbera specials. Proof that sometimes the creatures outshine the humans. But while the Herculoids fought across galaxies, Hanna-Barbera also gave kids lessons with a sci-fi twist on classic literature. Moby Dick and Mighty Miter, 1967-1969.
We cannot let our people fight Korg's monsters, Tog. So it's time for Mitor to appear.
Two shows in one. First, Moby Dick, a futuristic take where kids teamed up with a friendly whale, a far cry from Melville's novel. Second, Mighty Miter, a prehistoric superhero who gained powers from a magic club. Both shows shared a slot. Both felt like two halves of an odd experiment. Critics said Moby Dick was watered down, pun intended, while Miter was just another muscle-bound hero. Still, kids enjoyed the action, and Mighty Miter's shout of Miter was pure Saturday morning fun. Neither lasted long, but both showed Hanna-Barbera's push into weirder territory. But if you thought a whale sidekick was unusual, wait until you meet the squid who wanted to be a rock star. Squiddly Diddly, 1965-1966.
And he's ball for a touchdown!
Yes, Hanna-Barbera made a pink squid who dreamed of being a famous musician. Living at Bubble Land amusement park, Squiddly tried and failed to make it big, usually through slapstick misadventures. His upbeat personality made him lovable, but critics said the show felt like recycled gags from Yogi Bear or Quick Draw. Kids liked him, but he never stood out in a crowded lineup of animal cartoons. Some even saw Squiddly as too simplistic, lacking the satire of bigger hits. Still, his spirit foreshadowed Zanier sea creatures like SpongeBob decades later. Forgotten today, Squiddly remains a quirky note in Hanna-Barbera's songbook, and while Squiddly dreamed of stardom, Hanna-Barbera's next hippo actually traveled through time. Peter Potamus and So-So, 1964-1966.
Let's go down, Peter.
We have to. I'll open the gas valve.
Peter Potamus was a purple hippo with a monkey sidekick named So-So. Together, they traveled the world and through time in a hot air balloon. Every week, Peter used his mighty hippo hurricane hauler to save the day. The time travel concept gave the show potential, but budget limits meant recycled animation and broad cultural stereotypes that haven't aged well. Kids liked Peter's voice and catchphrases, but the show quickly got overshadowed by bigger hits. Peter faded into obscurity, though he later made a hilarious comeback in Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. Proof that even forgotten hippos can roar again. But before Peter ballooned out of sight, Hanna-Barbera ended the 60s with superheroes ripped straight from Marvel's pages. Fantastic Four, 1967-1968.
I haven't been able to penetrate this meteoric material with my most sensitive devices.
Yes, Hanna-Barbera actually animated Marvel's Fantastic Four. Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm took on Dr. Doom and cosmic threats in a short-lived Saturday morning run. Kids were thrilled. This was superheroes on TV before it was common, but Marvel purists complained the animation was stiff and stories simplified. Rights issues also prevented reruns, burying it deeper than most Hanna-Barbera shows. Still, it was historic, the Fantastic Four's first real leap from comics to animation. Forgotten by many, it paved the way for decades of superhero cartoons to come. And just like that, Hanna-Barbera closed the 60s on the edge of two worlds: silly slapstick and serious superheroes. You've just explored 40 of the strangest and most unusual cartoons from animation's golden age. Forgotten shows, rare gems, and obscure creations that shaped Saturday mornings in ways few remember. From weird experiments to vintage cult classics, these lesser-known titles sit alongside the studio's more famous hits, reminding us how rich this cartoon legacy really was. If you love retro nostalgia, hidden trivia, and uncovering strange cartoons from the past, stick around. There's plenty more to discover in this ever-growing cartoon collection.